We'll do a review in the Likutei Sichos in Chelek Dalet, volume 24. We're going to do the first Sicha for the Parsha's Eikev. And this Parsha talks about making Birchas Hamazon. And the Rebbe is going to point to differences between the way it's in the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch and the Siddur, and also the way this is different from the source of the Rambam. Very, very small changes, insignificantly almost, and one who reads it will say, hey, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. But the Rebbe shows us exactly how there's a different purpose for the Siddur. The Siddur was meant to give you the halacha right then and there, not the collection of halachas, but just to help you do the right thing at the moment, and that's what's important. That's what the Alter Rebbe writes there. Shulchan Aruch is more of knowing the halachas, which is a general collections of halachas, and while the Alter Rebbe mostly gives reasoning a little bit in the Shulchan Aruch, in the Siddur is even less than that. The Rebbe goes through very interesting the different way the Alter Rebbe wrote the Shulchan Aruch and the Siddur, and also as it compares to the Rambam. Let's look inside. Eikev, Aleph. In Onei from Seder Birchas Hanenim. So the Rebbe starts with the Siddur, the order of Birchas Hanenim, the order of Birchas Hanenim, which is in the Alter Rebbe Siddur. Shraib der Alter Rebbe, that basically brings the halachas of the blessings of enjoyment. Birchas Hanenim, if you eat, then you enjoy that you have to make a bracha. So very beginning, the Alter Rebbe writes, Mitzvah saseh min ha-Torah levorich achar achilas mozin. It is a positive Torah command to make a bracha, the grace, after eating the food. Shenemar, because the pasuk says, "V'achalto v'savoto uveirachto es Hashem." When you eat and you're satisfied, then you should bless Hashem. The Torah clearly says that after eating and being satisfied, one needs to bless Hashem. So the bracha is min ha-Torah. Compare this language with what the Alter Rebbe brings down in Shulchan Aruch that comes from the Rambam. Other Loshen was the Alter Rebbe is maitik oich b'Shulchan Aruch shaloi. This language, which the Alter Rebbe also quotes in the Shulchan Aruch, is genumen from Rambam. It's taken from the Rambam. Reish Hilchos Brachos, in the beginning of the laws of Brachos. As einen oberdos shinuyim in dem Loshen von Alten Rebbe, but there is changes, the language of the Alter Rebbe b'Svarav Anal in the Svarim, in Shulchan Aruch and in the Birchas Hanenim, legabei relative to Loshen Rambam. So there are differences between the source of them both, the Rambam, and the way it appears in the Shulchan Aruch and the Siddur. There's also changes und euch shinuyim zwischen the Leshonos in sein Shulchan Aruch und Seder Birchas Hanenim. There's also changes in the languages used in the Shulchan Aruch and then in the Seder Birchas Hanenim from the Siddur. And the Rebbe is going to point out the differences. So number one, in the Rambam Aleph, in the Rambam in Seder Birchas Hanenim, so that's in the Rambam and the Seder Birchas Hanenim. In the Siddur is the Loshen Mitzvahs Asei, and then it says Levorich Achar Achilas Mozin Chulu, to make a bracha after eating food. But it doesn't say who. It just says you have to make a bracha. You make a bracha, you make to the Eibishter. But it doesn't say. It just says Levorich Achar Achilas Mozin. Make a bracha after eating the food. In Shulchan Aruch, but in the Shulchan Aruch, is it Alter Rebbe Meisif? The Alter Rebbe adds Mitzvahs es levorich es Hashem chulu. Why is he adding over here es Hashem versus the Rambam and in the Siddur? It means something. So that's one change. Another change, but that's the Alter Rebbe different in the Shulchan Aruch than the Rambam than in the Siddur. And number two, the Rambam is maitik from Posik oich dem Wort uveirachtas Hashem elikecha. The Rambam quotes, as the Posik says, v'chaltzvot uveirachtas Hashem elikecha. The Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch, but in Shulchan Aruch is that Maram is the Hemshech HaPosuk. Over there, the Alter Rebbe hints to the continuation of the verse with the word v'goymer, etc. It doesn't mention Eikev. It says Barachtas Hashem. It says v'goymer. Uniseder Birchas Hanenim, as we quoted in the very beginning of the Sikha, in the order Birchas Hanenim in the Siddur state nor Uberachtas Hashem. There's no v'goymer on v'goymer. So Siddur no v'goymer. In Shulchan Aruch it says v'goymer. In the Rambam it's spelled out Eikev. Their diuk in them shinu b'negei v'goymer, the specific emphasis here on the showing the difference between the v'goymer is noch boiluter. This is even more sticks out. It stands out in the Hemshech HaSiv, in the flow of the Siv. Sayin Shulchan Aruch or Sayin Seder Birchas Hanenim, both in the Shulchan Aruch and in the order Birchas Hanenim. Zog der Alter Rebbe says, B'chol hanenem ha'olam hazeh, or min ha'olam hazeh. Anybody who benefits from this world, b'lei bracha, without a bracha, it says ki'ilu nenem mekotche shemayim, is as if you had benefited from sanctities of Hashem, something that was sanctified of Hashem. If you don't make a bracha and you benefit from anything of this world, it's like using kochim, like having something which is sanctified from Hashem. Everything belongs to Hashem. The earth, the world, the earth, and what fills the earth belongs to Hashem. So it's kochim really. The only allowance for you to eat the kochim is by making a bracha. If you don't make a bracha, you're eating kochim. So that's quoted both in the Shulchan Aruch and the Siddur. By them din is do hashinui in a fakert neufen. And by this din, there is a change between the Siddur and the Shulchan Aruch, but in the opposite way. In Shulchan Aruch is noch die Wörter from Posik nit meisi v'goymer. In the Shulchan Aruch, after quoting from the Posik Lashem Oren Tzumloi, it doesn't say etc. Und Davke in Seder Birchas Hanenim, but specifically in the order Birchas Hanenim in the Siddur, is there moisi v'goymer. Over there he says v'goymer. So the first Posik that he brings v'chalto v'savoto in the Shulchan Aruch, in the Siddur he doesn't say v'goymer, and in the Shulchan Aruch it says v'goymer. Here by Lashem Oretzum Loy is just the opposite. In the Siddur it doesn't say v'goymer, in the Shulchan Aruch it doesn't say v'goymer, and in the Siddur it says v'goymer. Now, looks like very insignificant changes. The Rebbe says, although it appears that these are very small changes. Wissendig aber wieviel is meduyik the lotion from the Rambam and from Alten Rebbe. But as we know how much it's precise, the language of the Rambam and of the Alten Rebbe. Ubefrat, especially benidin the Dan in our case, was the Alter Rebbe is mishane dem lotion was is meitig from Rambam. But here the Alter Rebbe changes the language. He's quoting the Rambam and he writes it differently. Balderich says that Alter Rebbe mishane for sein eigenem lotion b'shulchanei. And here the Alter Rebbe also changes from his own language in his Shulchan Aruch to the Siddur. Is zicher as di shinuyim zane mit hakavona. We have to say for sure that these changes have a purpose, there is intention, and there's meaning to them. Base. First, the Rebbe is going to want to explain why the Rambam doesn't have to say Levorech es Hashem, and the Alter Rebbe does, because in the heading of the Rambam already it says Hashem, but not that there's no heading like that in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. Let's look inside. Base. The first change between the language that the Rambam uses and the Alter Rebbe's language in the Shulchan Aruch ken and masber sein, we can explain. The Rambam zogt levorich stam. He says to bless stam. Nicht zugeben dik es savaye. without adding to bless Hashem. While in the Koseres for Hilchos Brachas, because in the heading of the laws of Brachas, Zok the Rambam says, mitzvahs aseh achas, he says there's one positive mitzvah. Vihi, quoting the Rambam from the heading before the halachas, he says, Levorech, that mitzvah is to bless the Hashem HaGodel VaHaKodesh, the holy big name, the big and holy name, after eating. So he already says in the heading that you're blessing Hashem. The Rambam nit iber chazer, and that's why the Rambam needs not repeat Hashem to bless Hashem. In Guf Halacha, in the Halacha itself, when he quotes the Halacha. Ubefrat, this is the Erst Halacha in Hilchos Bracha, especially this is the first law of the laws of Brachas of the Rambam. He has just said we're benching Hashem. Agodel v'hakodesh, so he doesn't have to say it again. So it comes immediately following the heading of above. Mashenkin in Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, as opposed to Shulchan Aruch of the Alter Rebbe, which we don't have such an introduction. So Zokter in the Halacha, as the mitzvah says, is Levarach Hashem. That's why he says in this Halacha that the positive mitzvah is to bench Hashem, because he hasn't said we don't have such a heading with Hashem. But the Rebbe says this whole idea that the Rambam relies on his heading, and the Alter Rebbe doesn't have a heading. Why do we need to rely on a heading or not have when we don't have a heading when it's so obvious who we're benching over here? Why does the Rambam in his heading, the Alter Rebbe B'chlal, the Alter Rebbe Arol Bavoranen, mitzvah sasei levorach Hashem, that there's a positive mitzvah to bench Hashem, not to say to bench, but bench Hashem. Da steht doch beferish in dem Posuk, it says beferish in the Posuk, uveirachto es Hashem. So why do we have to say that you only have to bench Hashem when that's what the Posuk says? We'll see later on the Rebbe explanation that the word "es" can actually include the Baal Habayis, and in the Rambam and in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, it's necessary to tell you that the mitzvah saseh is only to bench Hashem, not the ribu that you come from the "es." That's not a mitzvah saseh, as we'll see in the Rebbe's answer. But now the Rebbe is asking, why do we say B'chlal need to say "es Hashem" when it seems to be obvious? If it's necessary to caution, to tell you who do you have to bench, so then we have the same question before. How come in the Siddur, Farvos is that Alter Rebbe does mashmit in Seder Birchas Hanenim? How come the Alter Rebbe leaves this out in the order Birchas Hanenim? It doesn't say to bench Hashem. So the Rebbe will explain now what's the purpose of the Rambam Shulchan Aruch versus the Siddur. Rambam Shulchan Aruch are a collection of halacha. Siddur is how to do an action. Gimel. But we understand it by explaining the difference between Matoras HaChibur from the Rambam and Shulchan Aruch. What's the purpose of the authoring the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch, and on one hand, and the Seder Birchas Hanenim on the other hand, the order of the Birchas Hanenim of the Siddur. The Rambam Shulchan Aruch seinen Nischaber geworden. The Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch were authored als Oise v'Kibbutz Piskei Halacha, a collection and a gathering from halachic rulings. The Chelek is nor. The difference between the Shulchan Aruch period, not the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, regular Shulchan Aruch, and the Rambam is the Rambam covers all halachas. Shulchan Aruch only covers halachas that are applicable in our day. The Chelek is nor. But the Rambam is Mekabetz L'Torah Shabal Pekula. He gathers all of the oral Torah. Also those laws that do not apply nowadays. And the Shulchan Aruch and Halt, but the Shulchan Aruch contains only those laws that are important in nowadays. The Tzad Shove in Zeiz, but what is the common denominator between the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch? They're both collecting halachas. Gezamuk halachas, that these are gathered together laws that have been gathered together in one place. That's the Shulchan Aruch and the Rambam. The Siddur, however, the Seder Bichsanenim had the Alter Rebbe reingestellt in Siddur. The order of Bichsanenim, the Alter Rebbe placed it into the Siddur. Was Siddur, the Siddur in general, which includes the laws that he put in the Siddur. Seine Verbundung mit Anhogas bepoil b'chaye yom yom. They're tied to the actual conduct in the day-to-day life. That's the Siddur. Vimezetas in the Hilchos Netila Shachris. We see this. The Alter Rebbe wrote in the Siddur the laws of washing your hands in the morning. Hilchos Tzitzis, the laws of the Tzitzis and Chulu, which are lochas. Welche von sie hat der Alter Rebbe welche von sie hat der Alter Rebbe ausgeklebt zu reinstellen Siddur? Which one of the halachas the Alter Rebbe chose to put into the Siddur? That's the practical halachas. He didn't write all of the Tilas Yadayim. He didn't write all of Hilchot Tzitzis, just those which are applicable, that are important to the actual done. Thus haste, which means ad halachas von Seder Birchas Hanenim seinen geschrieben. The laws of Birchas Hanenim were written nit besignum limud l'shem yidiyas halachas. It's not in a style of studying, which is knowing halachas, not in a signum, but in a style from the heroes, the ma'aser, the poil of instructions for practical how to do in action, in actuality. So what does this mean? That means that in Shulchan Aruch, in Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe will give you languages which are general more, and the Siddur, the clarity and the emphasis on the practical right now. Einer von the Chilukim Dalet, one of the differences that branch out because of the purpose of the Siddur versus the Shulchan Aruch, between the Alter Rebbe's language and the Shulchan Aruch, and the language that is in the Seder of Birchas Hanenim, or v'halachas shebesidur b'chlal, which includes all the halachas in the Siddur. Just Seder Birchas Hanenim are some of the halachas of the Siddur. In Seder Birchas Hanenim, in the order of Birchas Hanenim, hoiros la'anhoga glach b'poil. Over there, the lessons, the instructions are how to do immediately, actually. Is there diuk haloshim be'ikev? So the emphasis of the language is mainly tzubavoranen. It is to caution us as di halachas ol klor arois bringen vidan hoge gleich alasar davzayin. That is, that the law should very clearly express how one immediately should do to conduct himself. Dan hoge, the conduct gleich alasar, immediately on the place davzayin need to be. But it's not so important. But it is not so important that diuk haloshin, the exact language, to caution what you are going to derive from this by another conduct, legabe another halacha, with regards to a different halacha. We're interested telling you right now how to make it clear what you do over here. We're not taking into consideration that it should be written here exactly, precisely, so when you're going to learn another halacha, you should not come to any mistakes or derived things. As opposed to the Shulchan Aruch, was is a kibbutz von alle piske halachas. It's a gathering of all rulings. Is there diuk haloshin? So over there, the specific, precise language in an oifen is in such a way was bavorant mezol nita ruisdering, and that is written in a way that it makes sure and it cautions us not to derive the funkin inyan, not to learn out from this a matter of us in the gehalten b'shulchan aruch. That is not something which is goes with the Shulchan Aruch. Anywhere, Vuzonzan, anywhere else. Don't make no mistake if I'm going to write in a way, because this is a Shulchan Aruch, just all of the Shulchan Aruch. So making him deriving from here something wrong elsewhere would be not the exact Lashon. The Lashon here is so you don't make a mistake anywhere. Based on this principle, we'll understand Favos in Shulchan Aruch is the Alter Rebbe medayik u'moisif. Why in the Shulchan Aruch the Alter Rebbe is precise and adds levorich es Hashem. He wants to say bless Hashem because he's cautioning you not to make a mistake. Und in Seder Birchsanen lost the sois, and in the blessing for Nenin he leaves this out. The Rambam, we know already, the Rambam wrote it in the Kiseres, but in the Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe brings it down, and in the Siddur, he doesn't bring it down. But this will explain to us this principle we just said. Sizaklal, we know when it says the word as the word es b'Torah shebiksav, that when the S is written in the written Torah, but this at all does not apply to the oral Torah, but in the Torah Shebiksav, when the Torah writes S, is aribui. That is including something else. Similar to that, we learn fun Es Hashem Elokecha Tira. What do we say? Es Hashem Elokecha Tira, not just Hashem Elokecha Tira. Es Hashem Elokecha. We learn out from the S L'Rabbi Talmidei Chacham that also to include a Talmud Chacham, you also have to have Yira, Tira, not only Hashem. Similar in our Pasuk. When it says, V'chalto goymer uverachto es Hashem Elokecha, is their word es aribu. The word es is actually including something else. We state in the Rishonim, as brought down in the earlier, in the Rishonim, uverachto es the Rabbi's balabais. You should blame as that includes you blame the Eibishter, but also bench the balabos. And the river is the halacha, and that's why the law is that oirach mevorich hamozin. Who mentions brichas hamozin should be the guests kidei sheyivorich the balabais, so that he should be able to bless the balabais. So we learn it out. Therefore, Muzer Alter Rebbe b'Shulchan medayik zayin. That's why the Alter Rebbe in the Shulchan Aruch needs to emphasize mitzvahs esem in Torah levorich Hashem. That the positive mitzvah of the Torah here is not stam, not the balabais. The mitzvah of the Torah is only vorich Hashem. To shel zanatos, he's coming to negate. So don't you make a mistake. There's only meinas the mitzvah sasem in Torah. Don't think that this positive mitzvah of the Torah is koilel oich de brach lebalabais. This will include the blessing for the balabais. Was vert gelernt from word eskenal, which is derived from the word es. Tell you no, varachto es Hashem es lekeh, only Hashem. Masheikin is said the bichas hanene, as opposed to the order bichas hanene. The important thing in the Seder Birchas Hanenim is just to bring out very clearly the conduct right here. Is nit noitig the Sofa Levorech es Hashem. We don't. It's not important to add to bless Hashem. Because it says in the Siddur when you daven, when you bench, uveirachto es Hashem Elokecha. We're not coming here to caution that in other cases. That's not what the Siddur is about. Shulchan Aruch is telling you other cases as well, that there's not a mitzvah somewhere else. But over here, we're just telling you right here what's important for this halacha over here. We don't have to say the Siddur says V'rach Hashem. Oich is muvim ma'atzmei, and besides, it's self-understood that Birchas Hamazon is to the Meibishtim. The blessing of the food is for Hashem. Und dazu bringt gleich noch You say the Birchas Hanenim. So besides the fact you don't even need it at all, but he also brings you the pasuk in Birchas Hanenim, the pasuk Barachtas Hashem. So it's abundantly clear that you're blessing Hashem. So therefore, the Alter Rebbe in the Siddur over here doesn't have to write it. In the Shulchan Aruch, you may think, okay, maybe the mitzvah says to bless Hashem is maybe a mitzvah says to bless the Balabais. So he says it's Hashem, but that's a general halach. But here in the Siddur, we're not telling you general halachas elsewhere, just over here, so he doesn't have to say it's Hashem. But Lois, and also to add, in Seder Birchas Hanenim, in the order of Birchas Hanenim, wird nicht gebracht der Din. Over there, the halach is not brought down. Ha'erech mevorech k'dei sheyivorech balabais. So halacha that the guest makes the bracha so that in order that he can give a bracha to the balabais, it doesn't say in the Birchas Hanenim. So we don't have to caution you in Birchas Hanenim that only the mitzvah saseh is for the for the bench Hashem. So in the order of Birchas Hanenim, we don't have to caution you them toes and now the above mistake that benching of the oirech is not minat Torah. And the mitzvah says ese minat Torah is nit koil bracha lebalabais. That the Torah command does not include the blessing that we give to the balabais. Masha'enkin and Rambam v'Shulchan Aruch Admor Hazokin, as opposed to the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch of the Alter Rebbe, who der Din wird gebracht, this locha is brought that we give the oirach to bench, so we can bench the balabais. Over there, they have to emphasize. The Alter Rebbe has to add, as Hashem Elokecha. No, but that's not the mitzvah say. In the Rambam, it's emphasized in his heading. Hey, noch achilik. This brings another difference between the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, the Seder Birchas Hanenim, between the Shulchan Aruch of the Alter Rebbe and the order Birchas Hanenim, that comes as a result from the difference of the purpose of the Shulchan Aruch, which is a collection of halachas and the Siddur to tell you what to do b'poil, is in the inyan from time halachas is the subject of reasoning of halach. The chidush in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch legabe dem Shulchan Aruch from Beis Yosef, the novelty, the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, as it relates, as opposed to or compared to the Shulchan Aruch of the Beis Yosef, is v'serzokt milsa b'taimer, that the Alter Rebbe gives reasoning. He tells you a matter and he gives you the reason. Halachos b'taimim, the laws with the reasoning. Mashenkin da halachos in Siddur, as opposed to halachos in Siddur, seinen blois piskan hoga b'negeya l'maisa b'poil. They're just no reasonings there. There's just rulings of conduct in actual action, what we do. Und afalpi as euch in Siddur bringen sich bekame mekoimes taime hahaloche bekitzer. Although also in the Siddur, in several places, he does bring reasons of the halacha. In short, is der chiluk zwischen dem Shulchan Aruch Admor Hazokin und sein Siddur. So the difference between the Shulchan Aruch, the reasons the Alter Rebbe gives in the Shulchan Aruch and the Siddur, the Alter Rebbe hat reingestellt Taime halachas in Shulchan Aruch. Why are the reasons brought in the Shulchan Aruch of the laws in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch? Again, not like the Beis Yosef. His kideis is only zayin al derech mevale olam. Shouldn't be like destroying the world. The Gemara says those who learn and rule just from the Mishnah without being able to know the reasonings, so they're going to get it wrong. They're going to get it wrong, and they're going to be mevale olam, destroying the world. So the Alter Rebbe writes reasoning, so you should not just not compare things without the reasoning. You're not going to rule the right way. So lib yediyas haTorah, that is, so that you know the Torah, welch is zu wissen, halachas b'tameim b'derech chitzorah, which is to know the Torah, to know the laws with their reasoning in a short way. Mashenkin is Siddur, b'derech zeh seder Birchas Hanenim, as opposed to in the Siddur, and similar in the order of Birchas Hanenim. Was in Yonei is Piske an Hogus Lemaisa. Over there, it's ruling how to do conduct in action. Seinen euch the time of bringen sich dort. So also the reason that the Alter brings there, nicht zu lieb as a time. We're not just knowing to know the reasonings, nor to live wissen klarer than hogel bepoil. It's just to more clearly understand and know how you should conduct yourself in actuality. The reasons are not adding knowledge, but they're adding how to conduct the mitzvahs. Machen ihr Geschmacker, to make the mitzvah more tastier, mit mehr kavana, with more intention, chayis, with more energy, v'chulu. We see it in many places. When you bring the tam halacha bekitza, when you bring the reason of the halacha short, gives you an energy in the actual doing of the mitzvah to do it with more taste, with more intention, with more energy. So, based on this concept here, we'll understand the second change, Haniska Lil Sifalov, that was mentioned earlier in Sifalov. Between the language of the Shulchan Aruch and the language of Seder Birchas Hanenim. We're talking about before the word V'goimer, that it says in the Shulchan Aruch and not in the Siddur. In Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe brings the Tam Halachas, so in the Shulchan Aruch, where he brings the halachas, so in order that we know, canal, as mentioned earlier, bringt euch bekam mekoymes die psukim from wann man lernt of the halachas. So in many places he brings the verses from where we learn these halachas. Al derech zeh beniden de da. Similar in our case, bringt der Alter Rebbe den posik. If there mitzvahs say, he brings the verse on the positive mitzvahs. To make the bracha after chilas mosen. It says, bless Hashem. Under far is der Alter Rebbe the noch euch meisiv begoimer. That's what Alter Rebbe adds, etc. While in the ideas limud birchas hamozim in HaTorah, because in the knowledge, when we're trying to study the laws of birchas hamozim from the Torah, is negeya nit nor the verte berachtas Hashem. Over here, it's important not just the word bless Hashem, but also the continuation of the pasuk. With the Alter Rebbe the Alter Rebbe brings down in the Shulchan Aruch as from the verte state the words that is written later on. Al oretz hatoiva shebe pasuk learn enough. These words we learn as minat Torah that birchas hamozim, that minat Torah, that when you're making a bread blessing on the food, kol zayin bracha, that should also include a blessing. Halo oretz hatoiva, halo oretz val hamikdash Yerushalayim, for the land, for Eretz Yisrael, and for the Beis Hamikdash Yerushalayim. That's oretz, the toiva. That's part of the bracha we learn out from the pasuk. So then, how come in the Rambam there's no v'goymer? Mashenk in the Rambam. Wo der Limud of Halacha now wird nicht gebracht. In the Rambam, that lesson on Halacha is not brought down, that it should include Allah Oretz Val Hamikdash. State Noru Berachtas Shem Lekecha. On the surface v'goymer, it doesn't add the v'goymer. While in der Halacha, the mitzvah says Levarach Achar Chilas Mosin, because as far as this halacha and the other halacha doesn't exist in the Rambam, it doesn't bring it down, is negay, but this halacha is negay blows brachtas Hashem Alekecha. It's only important brachtas Hashem Alekecha. That's where there's no v'goymer. But the Alter Rebbe wants to bring down the v'goymer for the other halacha. Aber in Siddur Koilo say there birchas hanenim, but the Siddur which includes also the order birchas hanenim. The halacha is birchas hanenim. With the timing, kumen nor zu klor machen dian halacha naga, where the reasons are just to make clear this halacha, this conduct. We're not interested in other halachas. Is nit negate to bring in the psukim. That's why it's not important to bring this pasuk. So why does the Alter Rebbe bring the pasuk altogether? What is bringing them? Ava became bring the Alter Rebbe then pasuk, but in the Alter Rebbe still brings this pasuk in our case. Well, that pasuk gitarois them gather, because this pasuk gives you the definition, defines for you Was kommt daraus from dem Tam? It defines because that comes when we know the reason and we know the pasuk that gives you from the halacha, that gives you the reasoning and the boundary. What is this benching about? The Tosefes Havona, that adds understanding. Kavona adds intentional geschmack and taste in that anhog in this context. The pasuk, by learning the pasuk, giving us the definition, adds to our enthusiasm by doing the actual mitzvah. The Geder v'tam for Birchas Hamazon is, what is the definition? What's the reason for benching? Is b'chaltu v'savoto uverachtas Hashem. The Baal that is given zat, since you became satisfied, Muslim for them benchen thank them every. So you need to bless for this. You must bless and thank Hashem. Und das ist eine Hagedoma zu Hemshech HaSif. This is an introduction to the following of this Sif, which is it is important to all blessings that we make. The Rebbe continues, if anybody who benefits from this world is as if you benefited from sanctuary stuff that was sanctified for Hashem. So now this is an introduction about since you're going to benefit from something that belongs to Hashem, then you need to bench him. Similar, by Birchas Hamazon over there, you get satisfied. Is a chayva bracha. So, as an introduction, in anything else in which you're satisfied, you have to make a bracha. That is learned from the pasuk. But it's not important. That's why he leaves out the goymer. While in them geder from Birchas Hamazon, because in the definition of the Birchas Hamazon is nit negei the hemshach haposik aloritz hatoiv. That's not important to the Birchas Hamazon. Afilu nid der worte lekecha, and that's where the Rebbe stops. It just says v'chaltu v'zavotu v'rachtas Hashem. And the Rebbe adds more. He doesn't even want to bring down a lekecha because a lekecha would be a little bit of a conflict. Not only is a lekecha not necessary to understand and know the definition of the bracha, nor as kumt lelamed vasuk bracha, is coming to teach us on a category of a bracha, which is something opposite from Birchas Hamazon, of blenching Hashem, or Birchas Hanenim, and blessing for enjoyment. Here we're talking about blessings that come for enjoyment. Elekecha tells us even for punishments that we should bring. Elekecha midas hadin, as we'll see. So the word elekecha, it actually doesn't fit in with the whole theme we're trying to bring out, that because you're benefiting, that's why you have to bench Hashem. Elekecha, you have to bench Hashem, that's not for benefiting. Steht in Tosefta, it says in Tosefta, as from Elekecha, Meloshen Dayonecha. From Tosefta, it said that the word Elekecha, which can be understood as your judge, Meloshen, let men up. From this we learn. Just as you make a bracha for the goods, likewise you make a bracha for the bad. Or whether any judgment that he judges you, whether it's the measure of good or it's the measure of punishment, you are still going to make a bracha. But you're not making a bracha because you're enjoying. But this is heipach from Birchas Hamazon and Birchas Hanenim. That is just the opposite of the blessing of the food and the blessing for what you enjoy. They come for the satisfaction, for the pleasure of the body, not from something bad. And therefore, how do we create it? That we say, doesn't mean that you make the same bracha. Over there, you make a baruch dayan emes. Is not in them lekubelim besimcha. That's only as far as to accept it with joy. You're going to accept it, but it doesn't mean that you make the same bracha. So therefore, the lekecha is something which would not give us the definition, which is in the Siddur important to know why we're making the bracha, to give us a chayis in the bracha. Zayin. Based on this general distinction between the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch and the order Birchs Kemen Euch Masber Zayin, then we can also explain the difference between the Shulchan Aruch and the Siddur in the Hemshech HaSeiv by the continuation of the Sif. And that is by bringing the Pasuk Lashem Ha'aretz U'Meloya. So we mentioned earlier, Lashem Ha'aretz U'Meloya, if they bring the Pasuk in Al Sif Aleph. So over there we have just the opposite, that in the Siddur Hashem, the Siddur he brings down the Goimer, and the Shulchan Aruch not. Seems to be contradictory to the Klal. Afal Pi, as the Bavorin Atos was ken Aruskum b'Mokamacham. Even though we just said to caution a mistake that can come out elsewhere, that's not the Siddur. What is Shaykh and Shulchan Aruch. That is applicable to the Shulchan Aruch. Unita zoyin seder birchas hanenim, but not so in the order birchas hanenim. Kinal sivdal, we said earlier sivdal is ober benegeya the bavodnish in the halacha v'hanhog al asar. But when we're trying to caution you on the law and the conduct right here, over there it's just the opposite way. In Seder Birchas Hanenim is Hiro L'Maisa, in the order Birchas Hanenim, which are instruction, practical, Kumt Oich Ahisofa Beloshen. So then we bring here an additional language, was Bavorant Afilu Dover Hamuvan. It can even caution us something that you know by yourself. We're trying to tell you how to do it. We'll tell you something that you can figure out by your own. We want to make sure, to make sure that the actual conduct should come out properly, we're going to say something extra. In Shulchan Aruch is the Lashon B'Kitza, as opposed to Shulchan Aruch, the language is short. When a state nit azachbas is moving matzvah, it doesn't state their things that are self-understood. And therefore, is that in Seder B'Chsaneni Moisif, only in the Seder B'Chsaneni he adds, Noch Lashem Ha'aretz U'Meloya, he says, V'goymer, etc. Dos is Moisif Bir B'Ha'alocha, this adds explanation in the Halocha, as Kol Hanene Min Ha'olam Hazeh Chulu, Kilu Nene Mikodesh Shemayim. Anybody who benefits from this world is as if you benefited from the sanctities that were sanctified for Hashem. Well, alles belongs to Eibishter. Everything belongs to Hashem. Welche meint, which really means everything means Hanoah von jeder Sache in Elam Hazeh. Hanoah benefiting from every item in this world. Was das as ganz Elam Hazeh belongs to Eibishter. This, that the entire world belongs to Hashem, is mefurat, is only specified oder gesagt, or said altogether, said in the Hemshech HaPosuk, Hemshech HaKosuk, table v'yeshavah, Shem Ha'aretz U'Meloya, table v'yeshavah. That continuation tells us that everything belonged to the Eibishter. Lashem Ha'aretz U'Meloya talks about Eretz Yisrael, gate of Eretz Yisrael. That goes on Eretz Yisrael. Und in Hemshech HaPosuk kommt zu, and in the continuation of the verse, it's added as a table. The ganze Welt is Lashem. Lashem was table. Und noch mehr euch v'yoshevah sein Lashem. Those who sit there belong to Hashem. The Mela, so they said, is Kol Hanenim Min Ha'olam Hazeh. Anybody who benefits from this world. Und afilu when der Michael Gehertz hat zweit mentioned, even if it belongs to another person. So somebody owns it already, but it doesn't matter. Everything, toivel v'yoshevah. Everything that's in the world, the people belong. Even if it belongs to somebody who's not Jewish, is as if you would be benefiting from Kodesh Shemayim. That adds the Begoymer. Every benefit has to have a blessing before it. When we're talking about the Shulchan Aruch, it's obvious that Hashem Ha'aretz U'Meloya means not only Eretz Yisrael, means everything. So we don't have to specify it. But the Siddur wants to give you the energy and the feeling that even if you're having from a goy, everything belongs to the Eibishter, and any benefit you have to thank Hashem. This is Mesichas Shabbos, Mesichas Chavdal Tevis, Umatzoi Shabbos Kodesh Va'era Tovshin Lametes.